Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lauren Pravlik, the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Thanks so much for joining us for today's latest in the AHLA Back to Business webinar series. Additionally, by now, I hope many of you have heard that AHLA and HT&G have signed an agreement for HT&G to formally become part of AHLA. For both associations, this marks an important milestone and allows us to better serve and support the evolving needs of the global hospitality industry, and will bring significant benefits to our members and teams. For other of the latest news and resources from AHLA, be sure to check out our website, including staying up to date with AHLA's Safe State initiative, an industry-wide guidelines and resources and checklists that focus on the health and safety challenges and expectations presented by COVID-19. Before we get started with today's webinar, just a quick reminder that this webinar is for hoteliers. It is not intended for members of the media. If you are a reporter, please disconnect at this time. Additionally, please feel free to enter questions into the chat and Q&A feature of the Zoom platform, and our presenters will address them throughout today's presentation. Today's webinar will be hosted by AHLA Allied Plus member Relay. Relay focuses on innovative, durable, and highly adaptive voice technology for deskless workers. This company's vision is to empower frontline teams with technology that allows them to safely and quickly connect to the people and information they need to get their jobs done more efficiently. Our speakers are Barbara Sharnack of Relay, as well as a great lineup of panelists joining us to provide their perspectives on what the future likely holds in the realm of adaptive voice-first technology. So with that, Barbara, I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you to everyone for joining today and everyone at the AHLA for putting on this webinar. First, before we get started, I'd love to introduce our esteemed panel, who I'm so happy were able to join us today. So you'll hear from Dave Palumbo, General Manager of the Marriott Raleigh City Center, Scott Boucher, Hotel Manager of the Peabody Memphis, and Rhiannon Zielinski, Housekeeping Manager at the Radisson Plaza Hotel at Kalamazoo Center. So thank you so much for being here and looking forward to you sharing your stories and your perspective on our partnerships. As we get started on this webinar, The End of Radios, probably a little creepy to be kicking off your Tuesday afternoon with a tombstone, but think of this more as a rebirth and saying goodbye to something you probably always wanted to get rid of, probably caused you a lot of stress, a lot of expense, and we're here to say that a new era is beginning. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And as we get started, I want to first explain why the end of radios is such an important milestone and an era to mark and recognize, specifically because of its implication in the hospitality industry. And that's because 80% of the world's workforce doesn't sit at a desk. And I would imagine that, maybe many of you on the call and your teams fall into this category. I'm actually one of the 20% who do sit at a desk. And, for folks like myself, I have access to my computer, my phone, everything is at my fingertips. Software has evolved and empowered all of these gains in productivity for desk workers. But for those 80% of frontline workers, they've been left out of this revolution. So over the past 10 years, you see desk worker productivity that was empowered by software improved by 15%. Whereas frontline worker productivity has actually decreased by 3%. So why hasn't that same evolution happened for frontline workers? And the simple answer to that is that there hasn't been a vehicle, there hasn't been a tool that's truly been able to infuse the power of the cloud, the power of software into a form factor that's conducive for heads up, hands-free work and the unplanned nature of it that takes place so frequently within hotels. The primary tool in many hotels is is a walkie-talkie, the radio. Yes, it's easy to use, but it's also expensive, it's breakable, and this isn't software, it's not connected. It doesn't offer those benefits that, I just touched on that we have as it relates to having cloud connectivity at your fingertips when you're sitting in front of a desk all day. So all of these gains have been made. The radio has pretty much stayed the same for over 50 years. And any enhancements that have typically happened have come with great expense. The other end of the spectrum, on the flip side of the walkie-talkie in many hotels, is the use of smartphones. And yes, it has the power of the cloud, but it is not easy to use. And in most cases, it takes the focus off of the work at hand. And that's to say nothing of the expense and the lack of durability that these tools currently have. So now I want to tell you a little bit about Relay, because we're introducing the vehicle that will bring cloud connectivity to frontline workers in a way that's conducive and adaptive to the way in which they work. So this is Relay, and what we do is combine the power and intelligence of a smartphone. If you actually were to take this device apart, it is a smartphone on the inside. So you have the power of the cloud just as you would in a smartphone, but in a simpler, more durable, and certainly more affordable form factor than either the walkie-talkie or the smartphone. One of the great things, in particularly relative to its categorization as a smartphone on the inside, is the fact that it has nationwide coverage. So it has unlimited range. It works anywhere that your phone will work. So whether that's a large property, whether that's needing to stay in touch with shuttles, whether that's needing to connect with your workers and your staff when you're maybe not on the property, that range is there's many benefits to it, as well as the redundancy of connectivity between the cellular connection that it comes with, as well as the ability to sign on and leverage a Wi-Fi network. So you have two connectivity options that the device will defer to, whichever is strongest. And then kind of going back to where we started earlier, this is powered by a software platform. So one of the ways that most tangibly comes to life is that we're all familiar probably on this call, and the AHLA has done such a wonderful job championing the use of employee safety devices and safety alerts. And Relay actually also functions as a brand compliant panic alarm employee safety device. So that's just one of the manifestations that the software platform enables so many other things beyond just two-way communication. So you have the efficiency of that, you have it in an adaptive, customized manner, but you also can do so many things. Another great thing that Relay can do is translate languages. So as you start to think of this as being, yes, it does everything that a two-way radio can do, but it can do so much more. The ability to serve as a panic button, a brand compliant panic button with indoor location tracking, as well as the ability to translate languages, whether you have international guests or language barriers, within your staff. Those are just a couple of the quick features that Relay is able to provide. There we go. And talking more specifically about the hospitality industry and the role that technology plays. Affordable, effective tech is critical to the industry's recovery and then its long-term success. So pre-pandemic, there was a survey done in 2019, which nearly 80% of hotels said that they were prioritizing tech investments. And a lot has changed, but that focus on innovating and looking at optimizations, is still there. And what we aim to do is be a partner that can proliferate and optimize, provide those optimizations, but with two key considerations. One is, as I mentioned, the affordability of Relay. Budgets are obviously a priority now. They always have been, and they're going to remain a priority operating lens, with full travel recovery not expected to resume until 2024. And the second is operational efficiency. Again, this is something that has always been a priority, but particularly in light of what's happening recently with hiring challenges, the ability to get your work done, get it done effectively, efficiently, with what we all know are probably limited resources. Those are two critical components. And luckily, I think that they're two critical components that we can play a significant role to help with. So I want to talk first about affordability and cost savings. So right off the bat, just want to let you know that Relay provides dramatic cost savings, specifically relative to two-way radios and smartphones. But also, we talked briefly just about panic buttons and the fact that, as you see, and you can decipher these graphics a little bit. I'm not going to read out the figures, but a fleet of relays will cost less particularly over when you look at like the cost savings over time, than a fleet of radios. And then the relay solution for panic only, when you compare that to many of the panic solutions on market, there's also going to be a dramatic cost saving. So one-on-one, there's amazing affordability there. But then when you combine them, you're looking at, over 50% cost savings when you look at that, particularly in the long term. So we know that budgets are important, and it's due to Relay's longevity, the longevity of our parent company and the longevity of us in market, as well as our partnerships within the wireless and the carrier space, and the strength of a long-built team and a global supply chain that's able to keep those costs down low and provide superior service. Because typically, you think that when you're getting a superior product with more capabilities, it's going to cost more. So we're really proud of the fact that we can offer more efficiencies and actually save money at the same time. And then, we talked about operational efficiency, and I'm proud to say that it's these folks on the panel and so many of you, you're the ones who determine what's operationally efficient. We at our desks and in our offices are the ones, it's our job to listen and build that. So I'm not the person who's going to tell you what's efficient for your operations. That's why I go to Dave's hotel, and Dave and his staff tell me what's important, what's going to make their lives easier. And we listen and we build it, and hopefully we prove those out, and then we keep doing that. So the feedback loop, listening to our partners, understanding what's important to them, what can evolve with the product, and what they want to see in technology that's going to help them do their jobs best. That's what's important to us. So I think, hopefully you'll hear from our panelists some of the ways in which we've succeeded in operational gains, but we're so proud to work with so many wonderful people, and we really rely on that feedback loop and the insight of and the expertise of you guys all on the operating level to tell us what's important to you, and then we can provide that and build that. So with that, now I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and as I go one by one kind of around the screen, what I'd love each of you to do is just tell a little bit about why Relay, how and why you ended up choosing to utilize the product in your property, and some of the benefits that you and your property and your team have realized over your time using it. So thank you. I'm going to turn it first over to Dave.
Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. In our case, I'll go back about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. This hotel had, prior to Relay, relied completely on cell phones for communication. And as anybody in the hotel business knows, that is not efficient, especially when you're in an emergency situation, be it a fire alarm, be it whatever. Cell phones do not give us, or did not give us, the ability to create a group conversation. So we started looking for the standard two-way radios, and as we looked at a couple of different vendors, I would say that the average startup cost was right around 27 for our size property, was just over $27,000 just for the actual device, and then on top of that, we would have had to add the infrastructure, whether it be repeaters, whether it be a base station at our AYS station. So 27 was just for the devices themselves, whereas our startup cost with the devices was around $2,500. So less than 10% startup cost. And as Barbara mentioned, whether it's 2 years ago or 5 years from now, budgets are not going to change. They're still going to be just as important. So from a cost standpoint, honestly, it was a no-brainer. And from an operational efficiency standpoint, as I mentioned, again, we didn't have the ability with the cell phones, and the cell phones had been used at this hotel after Nextels went away. So it was a quick fix, but it really didn't get the hotel to the point that it needed to be. So as we look at operational efficiencies with Relay, we have complete control over how we break down groups, create subgroups, if you will. And I have to be honest and say that, Barbara and her team, where Barbara talks about getting feedback from us, it was definitely a great relationship, because we'd sit down and we'd say, boy, it'd be great if this could do X. And no exaggeration, there were times sitting there that one of Barbara's folks would get on their laptop, hit a couple buttons, and all of a sudden it was doing X. I can promise you that if I'd asked one of the larger radio suppliers to make a change like that, I think we all know the answer would have been no time soon. They were very receptive, as they wanted to get further into the hotel market. And for us, we were great guinea pigs. We enjoyed it. It was a good partnership and has been a good partnership all along. As we talk about budget optimization, obviously the basic cost, being able to stretch your dollars in and of itself, was beneficial a year and a half ago. But then as the panic button requirement comes into play with the different brands or whatever state you happen to be in, Barbara's team was able to take what had initially for us been a communication device and expand its ability to be a panic system as well. Unfortunately, we've actually had to use it a few times, and it has worked exactly the way we had hoped it would work and exactly the way they said it would work. We couldn't be any happier with that. In the last bullet point here about feedback-based feature enhancements, as I've just touched on, anytime that we met with Barbara and or any member of her team and made suggestions, there was always this very open relationship, because as Barbara said, it was a software device. And I'll add one other thing. I've had the standard radios, as most of us have had, and I can recall buying a whole new system a few years ago at a hotel that I was at that time. And then as we wanted to add different departments, I wanted to add audiovisual, I wanted to add the valet team. When you did that, you had to bring all of the, now again, that may have changed in time, but you had to bring all of those radios back together to program in the additional new radios. That's not the case with Relay. If we add 5 units tomorrow, well, they will come to us already programmed, but we also have the ability to program them ourselves. And we, I'll tell just real quick one other situation. We dealt with the civil unrest over the last year, as unfortunately a lot of us have. And one way we were able to use the relays was, some of that civil unrest came after we had unfortunately had furloughed a lot of folks. So we had some additional relays. Well, the hotel next door to us, we were able to take about 5 or 6 of our relays, reprogram them ourselves, not send them back to Barbara's team, reprogram them here on our dashboard, create a subgroup for that particular hotel and let them use them. What that did for us, it helped them out. Again, they're not part of our company, it was a separate hotel. It helped them out, but it also gave us the ability then to switch back and forth. And when there were some unfortunate situations, we were able to switch channels and talk to that hotel, and they were able to do the same with us. And that's something that, again, it's a great, it shows how flexible the devices were, that we were able to do that, create that group, that separate subgroup, without having to ask Barbara's team to do anything. And so again, the flexibility of these units is just tremendous, and we couldn't be happier.
Dave, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing, and it is our honor to partner with you. Fantastic. I'm going to turn it over now to Scott, and if you wouldn't mind similarly talking about what led to your decision to use Relay at the property, and then some of the benefits that you and your team have realized.
Sure, absolutely. Dave said it very well. From the cost optimization standpoint, we were looking at getting all new digital channels. And when we went into that, we had 7 different channels. So we're looking at 7 different repeaters. and the cost alone was astronomical. We happened to see Relay at an event. We talked with them, and their entire team flew down here for 2 days just to sit and talk with us about it, which was very unusual. Something that we would expect from the hospitality side, but not something you expect from a vendor side. And so they really brought together the partnership aspect of things, even from the start. They weren't even here, and they came down, they came down and we talked through a bunch of things and what we can and can't do. And it worked out really well for us, for them to come down and be that engaged. We went from there and we started into, our team does a lot of question and answers. What can it do? So we started throwing a couple different things out. We use a dispatching system in a sense, and they were able to do a communication aspect with the dispatching system. For similar aspect, it was a valet is probably the easiest example we have. Somebody puts their valet request in from either the concierge or priority services, or they put a request in. Instead of having to sit somebody in a booth and at a screen and listen, it actually gets dispatched over to the relays. And when it gets dispatched, who's ever there can accept it and then complete it, and it gets completed back on the dispatching system. So it's got a two-way communication that's voice activated. So they're not having to sit and go check a computer and go check all like 3 different areas just to make sure they got the right ticket. It gets put through once, and they can also repeat it if they don't get the number right. If they don't hear the number right, they can just hit one of the buttons and say repeat, and it'll repeat the actual ticket. So that was an interesting aspect, because we just talked about it, I think, back in January, and in 2 weeks, the Relay team actually wrote it and put it together with the other company that we utilize, and it was up and running in 2 weeks. So the reaction time and making it user friendly for the inline user is very important to their team. So it's a great partnership. I can't say anything else about that side of it. The benefit of the GPS tracking is for us more so for transportation. We've got 5 vehicles that go different places within the city, and we can actually tell where people are, what they're doing. We can dispatch the right people to the right place. If somebody's someplace else and we've got one that's dropping off, we can visibly see, and then we actually still use a dispatching system. We don't even call them. We just dispatch to that person and say, you have a pickup here, and it goes right out, which is kind of unique. It's helped the transportation side for us quite a bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott, so much.
Sure.
Fantastic. And Rhiannon, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the same.
Good afternoon. Like Barbara said, I am the housekeeping manager at the Radisson Plaza Hotel in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We are a 340-room full-service hotel. We're an independent franchise with the Radisson Hotel Group. So about 3.5 years ago, I joined housekeeping. I came from the front office. And one of the first things that I noticed that needed to be adjusted on our team was communication. Prior to the pandemic, we ran about 79% occupancy on average during the year. So that's a lot of room attendants. Some days we would have 25 room attendants up on the floors. And as everyone in hospitality knows, there's a lot of information that needs to go to them throughout the day. So priority cleans, priority inspections, stayover service, lost and found. And we did not have a concrete way or a streamlined way to communicate with those room attendants. We do use radios here on property, but they don't work for a room attendant. They're too big, they're too expensive, they can break easily, and it just would really inhibit their productivity. So we started looking at solutions for what we could do, and we tried it all. We tried cell phones, we tried GChat. We have other team members who act as middlemen up on the floors. They carry radios trying to communicate through them, and it just wasn't very efficient. So last year, a pilot opportunity was brought to me to work with Relay Pro and see if it would be a good solution for us. And we spent 6 months piloting the program and really giving Relay Pro a run for their money, asking a lot of questions, testing out a lot of things, and really deciding, is this the right solution for us? And ultimately it was. We needed something really simple. Our room attendants, they range in age and language and tech savviness. So the fact that it is a push to talk device has been awesome, because team members who couldn't necessarily utilize smartphone technology, texting, things like that, they know how to press the button and talk on their Relay, and that's awesome. We also knew that a panic button feature was going to be necessary. As a part of Radisson Hotel Group, they are now requiring all of their managed properties to have a panic button, and we like to make sure that we're always a step ahead. So we actually implemented Relay Pro before the managed properties, which we were really proud of. So utilizing the Bluetooth beacons in all of our guest rooms, our service areas, our laundry room, anywhere that a room attendant is going to be, if they activate that panic button feature, we know exactly where they are, and it alerts all the leaders, and we can go find them. And I'm very grateful we haven't had to use the feature yet, but it's really given our team members peace of mind, especially while we are slower due to the pandemic. A room attendant might be one of 2 people up on 6 of our guest floors. So they don't see a lot of people. There's not a lot of interaction. So having that panic button feature is so important to our team members. And it's something that we're really proud of, that we did implement that before it was a requirement for our brand or for our state. And then additionally, we utilize the location services just to streamline our operations. So let's say the laundry team wants to know where a room attendant is to go pick up their laundry. They can just press that assistant button on the device and ask where Betty is, for example, and the device tells them. So you have a lot less interruptions in trying to communicate with each other, and you can just figure out where they are and go find them. And then Relay also created a daily report for us that outlines where our room attendants were throughout the day, how long they spent in each room. So it helps us not only just with performance, but also tracking our productivity and our labor standards. So really looking at how long does it actually take to clean these rooms, and really diving into what the team's doing during their shift so that we can plan better in the future. And lastly, one thing that we really love is that we have that great partnership with Relay Pro. Anytime I have ever needed any sort of IT support, I always hear back within an hour. There has never been a problem that we can't fix. And like my 2 colleagues were saying, a lot of times we can fix the problem on our own. The software is very simple. The dashboard's very simple. With very little training, I can go in and figure out how to create new groups, rename the devices, everything that we need. So it's been awesome for us. It really has helped our room attendants feel empowered. If they are in a room and they need engineering to come and fix something, they can make that call on their own. They're not having to track someone down on the floors. They're not having to call the front desk and bother them while they're handling guest issues. So yeah, it just overall, I think my first 2 years in housekeeping, I felt a little discouraged because we hadn't found the solution that we needed. And then Relay came along, and really, really grateful. It's been exactly what we need. And I'm actually really excited to look into helping other departments implement it as well. It's been cool hearing about the solutions for valet, because that is absolutely something that we need some assistance with. So looking forward to expanding Relay throughout the rest of our property.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. Thanks to all 3 of you guys. You are amazing partners, and we are privileged to have you, and can appreciate you more in general, as well as for being here today. So thank you guys. And with that, and I don't know if Lauren, you want to moderate this, feel free to jump in, but want to take the opportunity to answer any questions that folks might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a reminder for any folks on the line, you can feel free to submit questions either via the Q&A feature or the chat function on Zoom. One question that came in, is the system reliant on Wi-Fi or cell service, or both? And how does that address connectivity deep into a hotel?
Great question. And the short answer is both. All of the devices are activated on the cellular network, and we actually have the ability to switch carriers. But yes, so first off, they are all activated on cell, but then you also have the ability to connect to a Wi-Fi network or networks. And then what the device will then do is defer to whichever connection is strongest. So if there are those areas within a property where there might be a dead zone. We'd recommend connecting it to Wi-Fi, and typically those areas are covered within the property Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi boosters are also very easy and very affordable to implement if there are some of those deep and dark corners. But the short answer to that question is both.
Great. What if any are the monthly cellular fees?
Yeah, great question. So the monthly fees start at $10 a month per device. Annually, that you get 2 months for free. That's $100. So again, it's a very dramatic cost savings, particularly looking against a traditional radio or a smartphone.
Great. And does the platform provide geolocation? If so, what's the specific radius?
Yeah, great question. So overall, it does. There's GPS location in all of the devices, and that can be turned on or off. So if privacy or union regulations for anybody is a concern, the location tracking is not required, and that is a feature that can be shut off or turned on. But the way that the GPS will show up for all devices is the same way it would look on your phone. So you would have that outdoor GPS view. It will know where you are, at a particular address, or if you're at a larger footprint, where within that footprint. And then we do have the ability to set up indoor location tracking. So we have Bluetooth beacons, which can be self-deployed, and that's how we provide indoor location for panic button alarms, or some of the tracking scenarios that Rhiannon mentioned. So all these beacons are associated with a particular room or location within the property. And then you would have the ability to see, down to that room level, down to 5-meter accuracy as is required with some of the brands, exactly where they are.
And Barbara, if I could, I'll just add to that because we have GPS locators based upon the cell signal, we had an incident a few months ago where one of our housekeeping attendants misplaced their relay. And when we checked the dashboard, we found that it was in Virginia, and we're able to determine that's because that's where our contract linen company was, and she had dropped it in the linen, and it made its way to Virginia. But the point is, we were able to go to the dashboard and see where it was.
That's a great anecdote. I hadn't heard that one.
There's some things we're not proud to tell.
Yeah, just if there are any other questions coming in, but I'll in addition to loss prevention, we also, for shuttles, we see the location component, be prevalent, as Scott mentioned that as well. You can set up geo fences so that you can have get alerted when, again, if it's a shuttle or a particular person enters and leaves a particular zone. But yeah, a lot of great opportunity to leverage location tracking for different purposes. Any other questions that came in?
I think we've kind of addressed this, but the accuracy of the GPS within the property.
Yeah, so if you have the beacons, then you can get down to 5-meter accuracy. So this is typically used when you want to know the height or room level specificity. If you don't have the beacons and you're just using the GPS on the device, think of it, the location as operating the same way it would on your phone if you were to pull up a map and kind of see where that dot was. So you'd know the particular address, and then within a larger footprint, where within that footprint the device would be, or the person holding the device would be.
Yeah, the beacons have been very accurate on our property. And one of the things that we were curious about is how long the battery would last. And we have not replaced any batteries yet. So that's been great. But yeah, anytime I need to locate someone, it is very accurate.
Thanks, Rhiannon. And yeah, to answer that, the batteries within the device, and we were very purposeful about this because we heard a lot of feedback with other Bluetooth beacons that they took up outlet spaces within a room, which of course is very precious space. So we wanted to make sure that ours, could be hidden discreetly wherever is most convenient. And they're just AA batteries within them, and they last up to 3 years. And you'd get alerted within the dashboard if any of them, were on low battery. So yeah.
I was going to add one of the things that didn't really get brought up, but I thought was interesting. Unfortunately, one of our chief engineers actually dropped the relay in 200-degree water for about 8 minutes. And he fished it out. After he fished it out, he put it on his desk, went to go to the kitchen to get a bag of rice, the whole hoping that the rice would, and when he came back, it was actually working. So
Yeah.
It was pretty unique to have that much durability, considering, what you went through in the past with one of the radios. If a radio fell in the water, you were done.
Yeah, since Scott brought that up, someone on my team dropped one in a toilet and it still works great. We sanitized it, of course, but yeah, they are much more waterproof than they look.
Thank you guys for bringing that up. And yeah, the devices are fully waterproof. They have an IPX8 waterproof rating. They go through military grade life cycle testing. We've actually, if anybody wants a video, you can ping me afterwards. We have run over them with a golf cart. They still work, as you all mentioned, the waterproofing, heat, cold, salt, fog, you name it. So that was really important to us. And as you can see, there's no antenna on these as well. So they were designed with the type of active work in mind that we know operators do. So thank you guys for bringing that up and telling those stories.
Great. And one other question that came in, Barbara, was can the system be configured to work amongst multiple properties that are in close proximity, like a block or two apart, and considering they'd be under the same umbrella and have cross-functional employees as well?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And yes, so from a range perspective, they could be a couple blocks away, or you could be, across state lines, and they would still work because they'll work anywhere, your phone would. So we see that used frequently. We have, whether it's sister properties or just, incredibly large properties, but we see that all the time. And, you can customize the configuration of your channels however you want. And you can have as many channels or as few channels as you want. So we have some properties that say, hey, we just want everybody on one channel and that's it. We just want to make it super simple. We have others that have, upwards of 30 channels. And in addition to being able to customize how many channels you want, you can also customize who has access to who. So I know our partners here have, the full suite of everyone at their property, but there's probably folks that, you just want to be able to talk to their supervisor, and you can have two devices that look exactly the same, that are on the same account, and have completely different levels of permission, in addition to being able to communicate one-on-one with one another. But to go back to your question a little bit more directly, you have the flexibility to set up, that level of, group customization, whereby, maybe it's like this property has, within one umbrella account, there's a channel for this property in this department, this property in this department, and, you can switch channels and talk between them as though, you were all in the same building. But not only does the flexibility exist for you to set up that channel structure as is most convenient for the operations, but as our partners mentioned, you can kind of shift that around. If you have a thought that, this is how it's going to work, but then you realize people need more or less access, it takes seconds to make that change within our dashboard, and it's applied instantaneously to the devices.
And then maybe just one more quick question for the panelists, but how has their coverage and use of relay changed since the onset of the pandemic last year?
I could add, if you want, the advantage of having channels and being able to switch back and forth. When the pandemic actually started, we went from having 5 or 6 channels. But when it started, we've never closed, which was fortunate, but we scaled back so much that it was kind of a click of a button to get everybody to have the same channel. Because when you're limiting the staff, people need to do more from where they hear. So it wound up being a real easy, a one button click to say, okay, everybody's now on this channel, so that the communication went through everybody as to who needs help and when, type of deal.
Yeah, for us, we did not implement Relay Pro until a couple months into the pandemic is when we started the pilot. However, I think that it was the appropriate time to start it because with less payroll, less occupancy, like I said, we went from having anywhere between 20 and 25 room attendants a day to sometimes having 1 or 2 and not having multiple leaders. So it just helps us communicate a little bit more. For example, in the past, a laundry attendant would go down every floor, every wing to pick up laundry because there were a lot of room attendants. And now they just figure out, okay, where's my room attendants? Go straight to them. So they're really saving time, much more efficient. So I think as we get busier, we will see additional benefits, especially with more guests, more early check-ins, more things to communicate. But right now it's really helping us from a productivity standpoint. We know where people are, we know how to help them and get to them.
In our case, unfortunately, we did suspend operation briefly last year. And then while we were suspended, and then after we reopened, we did switch everybody to one channel for the reasons that Scott mentioned, that everybody is sort of doing everything. And from an efficiency standpoint, there was no need to be on on different channels. But now as businesses started to come back up and we started to bring staff back, we have reactivated or reassigned certain units to their own home channel, whether it be housekeeping or loss prevention. And again, our ability to be able to do that on the dashboard, certainly has been very helpful.
Perfect. Well, I think that wraps up the questions for today. Barbara, any last minute remarks before we close it out?
I just want to thank again our panelists and our partners. We are so grateful for you and really appreciate you being here today. Thank you to the AHLA. And I will mention, we're actually soon to announce a new partnership with the AHLA Foundation, whereby every purchase of Relay will go to, supporting training and bringing workers back to work through the foundation's wonderful work with youth. So really excited. They told me I could mention it here. So very excited to continue our partnership and do what we can to support the reemergence and recovery of the industry, and especially trying to bring workers back as quickly as possible. So thank you to everybody who joined, again to our panelists and to the AHLA. And I believe you guys are going to send this out afterwards, and contact information will be there. And we'd love to speak with any of you guys who are listening or watching today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. For those on the line, AHLA will distribute a recording of today's webinar and post it on to our webinar archive for folks to be able to access regularly. And special thanks again to Barbara and the Relay team for your support, and very excited for our partnership via the foundation. And thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today and the insights that you shared and your membership with the association. And thanks for everyone that was able to join us this afternoon. Hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great one.